What's up, YouTube users? Yeah, that's gonna be my intro from now on, so let's get used to it. I'm Player 4, and, I can already feel a sense that my name probably lights up a burning question. Wait, so if you're Player 4, then that must mean you have people named Player 1, Player 2, and Player 3 around, right? Where are they at? Ah yes, that's what I expected to hear. And now we'll go ahead and answer it. Where are Players 1, 2, and 3? Well, I must break it to you that they don't exist. Well, I mean, they technically do, but not in the way I assume you're thinking. Okay, hold on, let me start at the top. Welcome to Storytime. So, once upon a time, in the year known as 2008, I was a 6-year-old child who suddenly and unpredictably received my first video game console. I went through my entire school day having no idea it was happening, but I did indeed come home to the presence of the legendary Nintendo Wii. And yep, as you probably thought, this whole player thing is derived from gaming, even though that's not the only thing I do on here. So, in addition to one of the first games I ever played, naturally being Wii Sports due to its pack-in status with the Wii, I also had Mario Party 8 very early on. Now, besides being great for easily accessible local multiplayer with the family, what else do these two games have in common? The answer I'm looking for is that they both use a certain lineup of colors that represent you depending on what your player number is. From paying attention to the pointers, the scorecards, the bowling balls, things like that, it can be noticed that Player 1 is represented by blue, Player 2 has red, Player 3 has green, and Player 4 has yellow. Not only does Mario Party 8 do this as well, that game takes it to an even more symbolic level. The player colors show up in the form of paint, skateboards, airplanes, soda. If you've ever been a fan of these two games, you just cannot escape this one particular lineup. I certainly couldn't, as Wii Sports and Mario Party 8 were among my most frequently played games during this time period. On top of that, plenty of other games use blue, red, green, yellow as well, some of which are other childhood favorites of mine that I still play today. Obviously not all games share this feature, which is a topic that another YouTuber made a video about, but the environment I was brought up in pretty much dictated that was what I would become used to. It is true that Mario Kart Wii, my favorite game of all time, instead opts for yellow, blue, pink, green, but an important factor to note at this point is that I primarily grew up playing games by myself or with a lower number of people. Anytime I played Mario Kart Wii, I simply did not see the full color lineup, because having 3 other people to play it with was basically just a fantasy. In fact, I don't know if I've ever gotten a chance to do it. That, however, did not matter with Mario Party 8, because when you play that single player, you have computer players filling the empty slots. So it didn't take long for it to be drilled into my head that blue, red, green, yellow is correct. And in addition, I have this fascination with colors that dates back to my very early childhood before I had even experienced a single video game. You can probably tell based on the way my channel looks. Alright, so that was the first part of the story. The question we need to address now is, why did I end up attaching myself to the role of Player 4 so heavily that it's become my identity now? Well, to understand that, let's first acknowledge that I previously was attached to being on the other side of the aisle. Had I started a YouTube channel during the early to mid 2010s, I could have been called Player 1, and there are 2 major reasons for that. First off, I was naturally Player 1 most of the time due to the sheer fact of usually being by myself. While I do have a pretty rich history of gaming with my family members and eventually did make some good friends during 2013, I spent far too much of my time with games to not be focused on single player. Like, you can't always have people available for a gathering, but when you're playing single player, the only schedule you need to console is your own. Second, I liked being in control, I was impatient about waiting for people to press the buttons, and sometimes the human ego can take us to places of the leader role is mine, which in my case unfortunately led to some dumb arguments that I started. Looking back at it, me growing older and starting to dislike my past childish behavior where I would enforce the rule that no one else could be P1, it might be a reason for why my desires totally flipped over. Mostly though, it was just at some unidentified point that I realized I wanted to give the other player numbers a chance. And the reason I had in mind was that I had grown tired of being blue all the time. Blue was never my favorite color to begin with, so in retrospect I suppose that era was destined to be finite. My preference for color variety, My preference for a variety of colors was going to take over at some point. I would occasionally have these multiplayer sessions where I would be player 2 so I could have red, or be player 3 so I could have green, which I did have a fun time with. It was a cool, novel experience. Still though, it wasn't quite powerful enough to completely rip away my player 1 attachment. The timeline of events I'm speaking of was not a clearly defined change, but rather a sign of things to come, at least when you look at it with hindsight. I would still ask everyone to let me have the P1 controller most of the time, and I continued to predict that's what I would do as an adult. Alright, so yeah, this really is quite a slow progressing story. Me being player 4 didn't enter the picture until 2017, I think. But there is a simple reason for that. All throughout my life, I have rarely been able to have any gaming sessions where 4 people were playing at the same time, unfortunately. It usually was capped off at 3 for reasons I don't have time to explain, to the point that I started experiencing the P4 roll through my sister and I pretending that some of her dolls and stuffed animals were playing with us. Something was happening around this time where I really started wanting to know what being player 4 was like, largely because I had almost never experienced it before. I can remember only one time, like before 2017. It's like my neurodivergent brain that gets fascinated by weird particular stuff like that was viewing the role of player 4 as this rare and exotic thing. And when I tried it out, the role ended up fitting me like a glove. I could tell I had found a new home base. Possible explanation I can think of is that since I was tired of being player 1, I may have subconsciously thought that the proper solution to that was to drift as far away from it as possible. I can only imagine the novelty helped as well. Around this time, I was also getting rather crafty with my lifelong daydreaming habit and started imagining a scenario where I'm in a friend group in which everyone is assigned a player number even when they're not gaming, with the colors, having a prominent role in many activities. I made myself player 4 because of the feelings going on at the time, and because I thought the other slots were better suited to different characters, you could say. Earlier in the video, I talked about how the other players technically do exist. What I meant by that is that I do have a real-life group of friends where we did assign each other player numbers one day, but they don't really have an impact in our activities. It's not something we actively bring up, and these people don't have the same career interests that I have. So while I do want to feature them on my channel someday, the idea of having a full-time players clan where we play video games and make music together is still just that, an idea. And frankly, how likely is that to come to life anyway? There are a whole lot of boxes that would need to be ticked in a world full of diverse people who don't take this stuff as seriously as I do, so I feel like this whole thing would probably be best done with fictional characters. Specifically, being a brony, I'd like to do the kinds of videos that these pony in real life creators you may have seen do, but adding a new twist to it. My Little Pony characters animated into the real world playing music and games with me. Is that something you'd be interested in watching? Okay, hold on, this is only my second video and character animation is not within my skill set, so we can't expect to see those types of videos anytime soon. But if you like what I'm doing so far and continue to support by watching and subscribing, that'll help me get to a point where I can hire animators and voice actors. Anyway, the overall point is that bringing the title outside of the gaming world helped to solidify in my mind that I don't just have the title, I literally am player 4. For those first couple of years, it was just a title, really, but then in 2020, I decided to join a website where pseudonyms are still the norm. Lots of YouTubers do name their channels after their legal names these days, but in this other community I was getting to, pretty much no one does, and I wanted to go with the flow. When it came time for me to make a username, all this history had built up to the moment where there was no doubt what I'd be going by. Player 4. Alright, so there you have it. Despite not currently having anyone else to represent the other numbers, my YouTube username is Player 4 because I've always liked the way some video games arrange their player colors and because certain things in my life happened the way they did. I do treat it as my name at this point and have been going by Player 4 on social media and among my friends for the last couple of years, where it has taken on various shortened forms. In addition to the video game style P4, some people call me 4, others say Player. I'm good with any of those. Well, here we are. Now that the mystery in the title has been solved, this is where Storytime is going to end. Thank you a lot for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and while you're still here, remember to subscribe and ring that notification bell if you haven't, so you don't miss out on another story time. What will the next one be? Well, take note of how I mentioned that I started aspiring to be in a band when previously gaming was my undisputed focus in life. How did that come to be? That will be explored in the next story time. This, though, is all I wrote for this video. Player 4, turning off. Was viewing Player 4 as this weird as this. No, that's not it. This video is just so goofy. It is true that Mario Kart Wii, my favorite game of all time, instead opts for yellow, blue, pink, green, but no, that's not what I was gonna say. The answer I'm looking for is that they both use a certain lineup of colors that represent you depending. The answer I'm looking for is that they both... The answer I'm looking for is that they both use a certain lineup of colors that represent you depending on what your player number is. Wait, hold on. I was gonna do this. Now, besides being great for easily accessible local multiplayer with the family. This is such a goofy video.